So the actors here, starting performing new shows. Actually, I already can say that it's the top crop, as they say. You can see that the script writers of the Shabak worked very hard, relentlessly, and we have a all new series of shows just start running. So it would be a shame if I'll go to sleep very early as I planned, because maybe I'll miss some of the best crops. So probably this is going to be a long night with many theatrical shows, mostly premieres of amazing new scripts written by the best screenwriters of the intelligence communities of this world. So stay tuned and don't stop recording. This is going to be extremely sophisticated with the best tradition of the dramatic presentations of the Shabak and the Mossad. So before it starts, I thought about something. This whole thing reminded me of something. Speaking about the intelligence communities of this world. So how can you identify, how can you, tell between them? Because, they all look the same, right? So how can you identify, who are the Israelis, for example? So it's a nice question, of course, that my long-time subscribers already know the answers, but I want to answer in a different way. It's not a new answer, but it's in a different way. I'll tell you something, I'll tell you something that you didn't hear yet. At least not for me. When I was a child, probably around the year, I was about 10 or 12, early 90s or the middle of the 90s, an era that I like to speak about a lot, and I've written about quite a bit, and about the pop cultures of the era. I was subscribed to one of the magazines that was centered around computers and computers games, that computer culture in general. It was called The Wiz. Maybe some of you, certainly the Israelis, remember this magazine. A monthly magazine named Wiz. And it was it was of all the computer, or video games and computers magazine that were published at the time in Israel. This was by far the one with the highest quality. And it was both in terms that it didn't only dealt with computer games and video games, but also with computer culture and video game, or in more general way and more sophisticated way. But it was also the print quality was the highest. It was obviously the most expensive. But my father, he gave me he bought me subscription, and I was subscribed to it for maybe 2 years or something like that. So I remember they was 94, 95. And it was, I remember reading one of the monthly magazines. When you were a child and you get a monthly, I had several monthly magazines during my childhood days. And I remember that when you were a child, you actually get the magazine in the mail, in the actual box office. It's so it's just so, and you go back, you come back from school, you see the magazine and you're so excited. Yeah, it's a new a new issue, a monthly issue, and you read it it's so it's so and as I said, it was published on a relatively quality paper. Relative to what was common at the time. Maybe today, I don't know. Do they still print anything at all? So difficult to say, but relative to the time, it was a high quality print. So it was really exciting to smell it and actually to feel it and of course to read it. So I remember it was one of those days, and so I remember I started reading the magazine. I don't remember what month's issue, but so from time to time they also had actually stories. Original, I don't know if they were original. Probably some of them were actually translated as common in magazines in any kind, but actually fiction, works of fiction. Not long ones, short stories, but this one I remember that specific story was it occupied 2 pages, which is quite a bit. I don't know, maybe 1,000 words. I don't know, not more than that. The story was actually was very simple, but it was padded beefed with a lot of many times short stories. It's got a puenta, as they say, it's point, but you want to be more than a very short story, and because the format of the very short story it never really sold well, in any kind of very short story. You need to become the short story, so you need to beef it up with the, and all sorts of tricks of that literary tricks. So it was like that. Because actually the point was very, very simple one, but it occupied 2 pages, and the subject of the story was something that it was, I think, the first time that I've actually heard about, but maybe it wasn't the first time, but surely it was one of the first times that I heard about the concept, if not the first time. And it was the Turing test. I think it was the first time I was about 10 or 12 years, 11, 12 years old, and it was the first time that I actually, I read like about something of substance about the Turing test. Even though it was a work of fiction, but it was like, it was a work of fiction that is very, it was a science fiction that is based on current events. People spoke about this. Maybe it was the years like following Deep Blue or just before Deep Blue. You remember that the supercomputer that eventually defeated Kasparov. So it was just during this year. People. There was a renewed interest with the Turing test. Because actually it was invented during Turing, which is at most 1950. But there was a renewed interest in the Turing test, and so this work of fiction was actually part of a trend that started at the time that of people that are not out of the academy, but actually in the general public, but with an affiliation towards technology and computers, that we start speaking about the Turing test and the special, hypothesizing about the Turing test, something that is actually today we're actually in the middle of another similar trend, and this is because of several advancement. Recent advancement, specifically in the field of understanding of natural language, which is central to the Turing test. So now, actually, right now, 2023 is another kind of resurgence of interest in the public sphere of Turing test, even though it's not exactly the same. It's not the same situation, because today, the basic understanding of computers and knowledge about computers is much higher today than it was during the 90s. So the baseline is not the same. But it's nothing to say that we are now in another resurgence of interest in the Turing test, and this is due to not specifically more interest in computer in general, because the interest is already high, but because of advancement in processing of natural language as in computer science, and not only inside the academy, but even more importantly in the works of commercial companies that are exposing their achievements to the public. So yes, it was a fiction, so a work of fiction, and it was padded, as I paid this post, with colorful, less or more colorful descriptions, but because the concept was very, very simple. So a group of scientists or so, they claim that they actually they can win the Turing test. They developed a software they can actually. So the idea is that they developed the software, and there is two terminals, two screens and keyboards and one is and the tester actually speaks by writing and reading with the two computers, but. In one is actually a real person answers the tester, and the other is actually the software. Is running the software that is being tested. But they don't know who is the tester actually. So it will be more difficult. So they cannot bribe him, or maybe so they can't tell what the preferences of the tester. So it's more difficult for them, for the group. So the group of scientists say that yes, we won, and they submit their claim that they can win the test. They submit their claim to supposedly, I don't know if it's a real institution, but according to in this fictional story, there was an institution that actually is testing such claims. And also, there is kind of a compensation involved, and so so they submit the application. So yes, and then they actually they set the rules. The simple logistics that are involved, and so the day arrives. The day the exciting arrives. So the group of scientists. like, they are placed in like in a room, but the tester can't see them. They can't communicate with the tester. They just see what's going on. And the person that is that controls the other terminal that without the software that is being tested is also, placed in his place, and everybody is very happy. They just wait for the tester, and the tester does not arrive. So they wait and people don't say what's going on. So after like a considerable amount of time, the tester actually arrives, and they see that it's not what they expected. I don't want to get into too much like racial profiles, but I wouldn't surprise if there was also racial profiling involved. After all, it was like the middle of the 90s, so people were not that yet sensitive as they are today. So maybe there was also a racial profile involved. And if there was a profile version, a profile like ethnic profile involved, I would say that according to my memory, which is of course a memory of person, more than 30 years after the fact, I would say that it's probably an Asian. According to this fiction, the tester was probably not what they expected, because he was Asian and old Asian tester. Just saying. So he sits next to the computer, and they don't really, and they found it like peculiar for whatever reasons that they, good or not, like all the involved people find it peculiar. So they wait, and he's just sit next to the two computers. So so the group of scientists can't communicate with him, because they can. They can see him, but they cannot communicate with him, because these are the rules of the test. No one can communicate with him, like before the test is over, as part of the rules that's set by the institution that is governing the whole ordeal. So just, after this, he's coming late, and just he sits like that, like in front of the two monitors, and he sits and sits and sits. So after some time, I don't remember how much time, like one of the monitors shows a line, and what's going on? So he said, "This is the human," and the Turing test is done.